Yeah, we'll start away here. I know that we are recording this, so we'll send this out to anybody that does miss the start of this. But thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to join us here today. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking through the Q4 Success Blueprint. We're joined today by Webtopia's very own Cardi, who will be talking to us about everything social. We'll be Arun, who will be talking to us about search. Mo will be talking email, and Chris will be letting his creative juices flow. We also are joined here by a special guest, Abir, who's a fractional CFO and the co-founder of Upcounting, an accounting firm that specializes in helping e-commerce brands with their bookkeeping and getting a deeper understanding of their finances. So lots of really good information coming your ways today, guys. So I'm your host today. My name is Ben. I've worked in DTC for over 8 years now. I have worked with brands all over the world, from women's fashion to jewelry to charities and tech and much more. Today, we'll be going through discussion on how to best prepare for Q4 and get the most out of it. So for some of you, this may be the busiest time of the year, and some of it may not be. For those maybe in the supplement industry or in the health industry, Q1 might be your busier time when people are post-Christmas binge and they're feeling a little bit more motivated and things like that. Q1 is a big time for you, but Q4 is a big time for a lot of the partners. And being prepared for a Q4 and having a good Q4 can turn an okay or an average year into a really, really good year. So what we're going to be doing today, which is going to take about 40 minutes, we're going to be covering 4 topics. We'll go through some questions in each topic, and what we'll do after each topic is we'll answer any questions. So if you do have any questions throughout, please do put them into the chat box and we will get to them after each topic. Maya, who's in the background here, is a marketing manager. She's manning the inbox today, so just let her know if you need to ask any specific questions. Okay, let's get cracking into it. So let's start with some strategy and budget allocations. This is topic number 1. So my first question goes to Cardi. What are the most important elements for a successful Q4 strategy for D2C brands? Can you maybe break it down into a few key pillars that people should prioritize?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is definitely early planning. So if you haven't started planning for your Q4 already, you should be planning now. If you start earlier with your planning, then it can make campaigns, when it comes to the crunch period, 25% more efficient. So you should be planning things like your inventory, your ad strategy, and definitely your creative assets and your offers well in advance. Also be thinking about your goal setting as well. So if you've got clear KPIs for the rest of the year in terms of your particular goals, whether you're looking at return on ad spend, whether you're looking at other metrics, they might change in Q4 as we get heightened competition and consumer behavior. And obviously you've got more offers running in Q4. So you might need to adjust those KPIs and what your success metrics look like. So again, that's something you should be thinking about now. The other thing that we always do is leveraging data. So looking back historically at what's worked before, particularly when it comes to ads, what's been the top performers, what offers have worked well, what structures have worked well, what audiences and what creative, so that can inform our Q4 period. The crunch time in November particularly is not the time for testing. So you want to make sure that you're doing all of that now. And thinking about your offers as well comes into that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned success there. So, Arun, what I'll do is I'll ask you, how do we measure success in Q4?
For search, Ben, measuring success, we do look at an array of different metrics. Primarily for all the partners, conversion metrics are the key here. Especially going into Q4, you would want your CV conversion rates to go up, your ROAS and CPA numbers to look better than your other quarters. So new customers are another key metric that brands do want to keep an eye on. Platform like Google, it can get a bit diluted. Campaigns can keep going behind your returning customers or new customers, something that we should definitely monitor. Along with conversion metrics, we should also look at traffic and engagement metrics like CTR. If your CTR goes up, that's a direct proof that your ads during Q4, you're targeting during Q4 is working for you. While the CTR is good, you also want to make sure the average time spent on the site or average session duration is also looking positive. Along with that, we do recommend all brands to have a really good share of voice or search impression share during Q4 for your branded customers or even for your non-branded customers. Some of the core search themes that you identify your brand to be super relevant to, please do make sure the SI share is being monitored and measured as a success metric. The final bit would be the budget cost efficiency metrics like average CPC. Everyone is aware that average CPC goes up during Q4. So you want to keep a close eye on that. So if we can get any wins there, any advantage of a lower average CPC during Q4, that's a big success for us. And budget pacing during this period. It's really important. Budgets, at least on Google, is highly fluctuating during this period. If the traffic is high, campaigns can even spend twice the amount of budgets that you said. So keeping a close watch on budget pacing will really help you succeed in Q4. Overall, if we can monitor all of this metrics and showcase a positive growth year on year, I would call that as a success for Q4.
And Abir, when it comes to financial planning, how should brands typically allocate their budgets across different channels that they are running?
Good question. So obviously, the real answer is that it's going to be a function of what your marketing strategy is at your brand. But if I'm talking in very broad general terms, that what I've seen a lot of brands do, a lot of the investment on the creative side happens very, very early prior to Q4. Oftentimes, brands are not running full funnel creative during Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Obviously, the cost to advertise at that time is quite high, and people are really just trying to jump on deals that are available. So you want to have that more full funnel type creative that works evergreen running in the months leading up to BFCM. During BFCM, usually you're not going to be doing any more new creative, and the creatives oftentimes are going to be fairly simple and straightforward, just trying to get people to actually convert. In terms of the Facebook budget, it's going to be split to some degree between pre-BFCM and during BFCM. A lot of times, if you're trying to build up your funnel or your audience and fill top of funnel, you might spend a little bit more on the months leading up to BFCM compared to other evergreen months, like say May or June or something like that. But obviously, you want to make sure that you have a very strong BFCM, so you're going to spend quite a bit there. With respect to email, a lot of that budget, I mean, it's not quite taking a budget in the same sense, but a lot of your investment is going to happen during the BFCM period itself. Maybe a little less leading up. If anything, you don't necessarily want to get too many unsubscribes or anything like that. So you really kind of leave that towards the end frame. And with respect to Google, it does depend a little bit on your strategy on that platform, in my opinion. If you do a lot of top of funnel on, say, YouTube, then maybe a little bit more Facebook-like in terms of that allocation of budget. But if you're doing a lot of branded search and non-branded, then or a non-branded search, then you want to be able to kind of leverage whatever is coming in during that time frame, given that you're investing a lot more on the Facebook ad side. But obviously, just keeping in mind that your target ROAS is probably going to be very different if you're doing a lot of discounting.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched off creative there. What kind of key dates and milestones should we be planning for, Chris, when we're looking at the creative side of things? Are there specific deadlines for campaigns, creative, that we need to keep in mind coming into Q4?
Yeah, definitely. I'll just reiterate what Abir said. You should be testing creative early on. So all the different messaging, all the different designs ahead of that. If you haven't already, take Carly's approach and look at your historical data from last year. That's going to put you in a very, very good place straight on the bat. But in terms of the key dates and milestones, you've got Black Friday and Christmas and Cyber Monday and New Year's Eve. I expect there'll be another one coming out of the woodwork that we're probably not adhere to. But I would say, like, in terms of the messaging that you kind of be running, be careful how the ads that you're running over these individual kind of moments. So try and not do Christmas specific ads during the Thanksgiving weekend, for instance. It may feel really, really out of sync with the holiday focus. Also, there are cultural moments that are coming up, so such as the 2024 US election, that you've got to be really mindful of the placement of your ads will require kind of extra care. So strategically placed ads to avoid cluttering any highly charged news cycles, which may dominate consumer attention. So think about the messaging that you're using, think about the messaging that's going on culturally in these kind of spaces, and making sure it remains relevant to your target audience.
Absolutely, massively important. Yeah, there's nothing worse now than putting out irrelevant ads, especially in such an expensive time of the year. When it comes to email marketing, Mo, we know that a lot of consumers around that time, they're signing up to email lists just to get discounts and things like that. How do we make sure that we can turn them into returning customers and it's not just a one and done for these people?
Yeah, we have to be truthful. When if the product is not good and the service is not good, they're gonna come back. But let's say that your product is good and everything is good. Your job and the role of a channel like email marketing would be to drive as much as delight and good experience in that first order, so that they want to come back. So you have the chance to be sending order updates. You have the chance to be also telling them tips about how to use the product, how to adopt the product, to use it successfully right from the get-go so they get the results quickly and come back to you. And then you want to be working at getting that second purchase very, very quickly, as much as you can. Because once the second purchase happens, the habit gets easily to have the third and the fourth. It's usually the gap happens between the first and the second order, and BFCM is a long period. Most people don't usually just make one order. For some, they make two orders from the same brand within the same period, maybe one before BFCM and one before Christmas. So just don't be like, don't hold back on sending more campaigns on that period. You want to be doing as much sending campaigns as you can, but just test different creatives, different angles. The inbox is full, so it's a hard chance that your email gets open. But you don't just need not to be aiming for the open. If they don't open yet and you just remind them with something specific in the subject line, you may see an increase in that day, like in organic PPC on like brand campaigns. It doesn't mean that the email didn't make any difference. Just make sure that you're sending more emails at that time. People are not kind of waiting for your emails and they don't remember what has been sent yesterday. Every and each day they have a compiling of history that adds up. And if you send an email today, they got other 10 emails at the same day, your email got buried. Next day, you should be sending maybe the same email with a different subject line. But this is a quick win that you can go around that too.
So there's no such thing as too many emails throughout Q4, you reckon?
Yeah. Don't hold back. Go wild on Q4. It's your time to shine.
Yeah, and it's when people are most in the mood to be buying as well. So catch them while they're hot as well, I suppose, and try and turn as many of them into as loyal customers, which is really beneficial, obviously, to the brand. So then moving on to the next part then, so we're going to talk channel-specific tactics for Q4, right? So I'm going to go back to Carly here and go, what are the biggest challenges brands face with Meta in Q4? Obviously, we know the attribution, we know the privacy and things like that, but how can people get around that? How can they optimize for Black Friday and Cyber Monday?
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest sort of issues that we have in Q4 is that increased competition and the higher costs. That's probably the biggest challenge that we're facing. And you see an influx of advertisers, particularly around that sort of peak Black Friday, Cyber Monday period. That's going to drive up ad costs and competition for ad space, making it more expensive. And then you've also got to factor in, therefore, that your audiences are seeing all of these different ads. So one of the ways that we can kind of combat that is to be prioritizing our highest value audiences. So again, it comes back to that preparing that I talked about earlier, making sure that we're warming up our audiences and testing different audiences so that we know which are going to be our highest value audiences and we've warmed them up ahead of time so that we're just looking to convert them and get them over the line in that Black Friday period. We're not looking to introduce the brand to them at that point in time. Optimizing our creatives by refreshing them regularly so that people aren't going to get fatigued by seeing the same creative time and time again, and that we can lean into those creatives that are cheaper for us and that are getting the best clicks and the better conversions, and emphasizing our unique selling points that are going to make us stand out against all of that competition. And making sure that we're using all of those tools that Meta's giving us. So some of the automated options like Advantage Plus and dynamic ads are really great. As long as you've tested them in advance and that they're working for you, they can be really good in diversifying our audiences and driving down some of those costs and competition. And then budget pacing as well is really important. So we tend to warm up our audiences and start leaning into things sort of in October, November, but then really ramping things up in that Black Friday period again, just to convert that sale. So you might find that things are getting a little bit more expensive in that run up and that you're getting slightly lower results, but you kind of hold fire because you know that you're going to convert all of those people when the peak time comes. And then really making sure this kind of dovetails into what Mo was talking about. So really using your CRM and your lists as well, and making sure that you're using those people in your retargeting so that you've got a cross-channel strategy and you're not just thinking in isolation. So as well as obviously sending people multiple emails, you can retarget those people using meta ads and use those lists as well to create things like lookalike audiences so that you're targeting the right people.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think when you think about Q4, there's almost like obviously there's 3 different months in there. You've got October, November, December. October is very much the warming up period where it hasn't necessarily got massively expensive, and then November is go time, and then you're trying to catch the stragglers maybe that haven't bought their presents in November and looking to buy for themselves, or a little bit of holiday buying in December as well. So massively important. Then when it comes to Google, Arun, what role does Google search play in driving conversions during Q4? What are the most effective Google ad strategies?
Yeah, so Google Search plays a crucial role during Q4 for brands, primarily because of Google driving the high intent traffic during that festive period. Uh, Consumers are actively searching for products, deals, gift ideas during that period. So brand share of voice across shopping and search plays a critical role in how your Q4 quarter would turn out on Google. Search volumes go up. Consumers are much closer to the purchasing funnel than any other quarter. So by capturing this high intent traffic, brands would see a significant lift in conversion, particularly the last minute holiday shoppers as well. While Kali and the social team does all their jobs on social platforms, people do come back to Google and look for the brand terms. So if you're not there, another brand would capture some of those audience. So high intent audience, that's what Google delivers during Q4. While what are effective strategies, I would say, Ben? Gifting is the influx in gifting searches during Q4 is quite high. So having gifting specific campaigns, having any of your bundles turned into a gifting product during Q4 will massively help. Setting up dedicated campaign, bidding aggressively, and having a dedicated budget for that campaign would help with overall growth of the account in Q4. For your sale products or your Black Friday, Cyber Monday offers, having a dedicated campaign rather than getting it caught up in your core or business as usual campaigns would help those campaigns stand out, and you could also have a specific focus or budgets going behind to those campaigns. Messaging, customizing the messaging, having those urgency message or sale messaging out there in your headlines or in through your ad creatives, through your Performance Max campaign is really important. Building an audience funnel as we go into Q4 to the run up to the Q4. If we can build some audience through your YouTube or demand gen campaign to help with retargeting during peak periods would help. We're seeing brands utilize YouTube Shorts a lot over the past year. The UGC content and other product validation content that brands tend to be sitting on social is now working well on Google. So we would recommend having a presence on a channel like YouTube and other display inventory of Google during that period. While the CPC on search could be high, these are the platforms where you could get in a cost advantage. While we work on all of these campaign optimizations on channels on your platform, please do not forget or ignore your catalog. So catalog is a big part of your Google Ads campaign. So go into your merchant center, use the platform that manages your content for the catalog, optimize your title and description, make sure those gifting or sale or festive keywords are embedded into the content, so you get the right share of voice during the period. Last but not least, if certain brands do not want to do Black Friday offers, we would still recommend having a different messaging or having a festive theme messaging, which is different from your BA messaging for that period. So just to stand out, even if there's no any offers.
Absolutely, it's about standing out from the crowd. When it comes to standing out from the crowd, then obviously creative is massively important. In terms of visuals, messaging, and formats, how can a brand create urgency without being overwhelming their audience, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. The key on creative at the moment is authenticity. You've got to remember that your digital landscape, when people are scrolling on Instagram, for instance, it's your customer space, it's not your brand space. And you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind at all times. So with that kind of framework in mind, think about the kind of messaging you're using, think about the designs and the concepts that you're putting across. So make them personal and genuine. For instance, take them behind the scenes, tell them about your brand, why you've done your brand, and built up a certain way. They'll make your brand feel more human and approachable. If you're kind of short on kind of assets and you're not comfortable in front of the camera, you can collaborate with like influencers. I think micro influencers are really, really big at the moment. They know their audiences really, really well. So the key to working with them is to construct a brief that empowers them. They want to be entertained by your brief as well, so they can make really passionate projects and speak to their audiences in an authentic manner. In terms of kind of the messaging that we're using, we're seeing short form video obviously dominate still. I think we all know that. But in terms of the messaging you use, think about the authenticity in mind. So don't say you've only got 5 days left, or quickly get out to the shops. Don't end up in a garage store and buying another candle for your partner. You know, use and emphasize urgency, but in a very authentic way. So, you know, get these while stocks last. You know, you're helping them out. You're adding value to them. Or, you know, this is back in stock now. So, you know, think about that. And then we're also seeing over the course of the year in terms of messaging and all the framing of our strategies as well, that you have to adapt your campaigns to the economic conditions that are arising at the moment. So consumers are much more price sensitive at the moment. They're more likely to respond to discounts. They will respond to more competitive pricings as well. So offer value propositions. We know consumers are becoming more pragmatic in their purchases due to these areas. So they want to know about the quality of your work. Yeah, and then in terms of like how you kind of do this, make sure your messaging is also rooted in a theme of like joy, togetherness, and generosity. You make them part of your brand as much as you are part of their lives.
Great. And just on that, obviously, you know, people's budgets will be going up in Q4, so we might end up seeing some ad fatigue on platforms like Meta and maybe Pinterest or TikTok, which obviously turns around a huge amount of creative very quickly. With the increase in ad spend in Q4, how can brands manage this fatigue on their platforms, and what strategy should they employ for it?
Yeah, for sure. How do you manage ad fatigue? Yeah, making sure you've got a continual bank of creative that you're going to be willing and testing. To go back to what Abir said, you should be creating and testing all the way up to like Q4. So you should have an idea of like what's working and what's not working. Align with what we was talking about before. There's going to be cultural moments that are always going to be changing the behaviors of your consumer. So make sure that you're identifying where you're seeing spend drop off on your best performing creative, and get ahead of the curve and kind of put new creative in a messaging that you think that will resonate.
Absolutely. It's all about planning ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead, plan ahead. And
Fail to plan, plan to fail.
Absolutely, absolutely. And going back then into Meta, into Google, and obviously, you know, cross-platform attribution is a mess, and it has been ever since the end of iOS. What is the biggest attribution challenges that we're going to see in Meta and Google? So for yourself, Arun and Carly, during Q4, and how's the best way for us to track the customer journey across the platforms?
Do you want me to go first from a Meta perspective?
Ladies first.
So yeah, I mean, we're still being impacted by the iOS privacy changes, although probably less so than what we were a while ago. But there's a few things you can do on Meta to overcome that. The first one, which hopefully everyone, if you've been advertising, has already got, is implementing the CAPI, so making sure that we're getting events directly from the server, as well as from the pixel. That will just maximize the amount of data that Facebook has available for it. I would come back to the CRM again, making sure you're using your Klaviyo or whatever CRM you're using and utilizing that data, because that is your first party data. So implementing that, as well as using data from your pixel. And really utilizing Meta as well, and some of the broad targeting is working really, really well at the moment. And then coming back to what Chris was saying, the creative does such hard work in doing some of that targeting for you. So that if Meta's sort of lacking that data, if you're really clear on your creative, who that ad is targeting and who it's for, then that can really help reach the right people by using your creative and having clear creative messaging as well. And then monitoring and adapting in real time. So making sure you're not just sort of setting and forgetting your ads, particularly during busy periods like Q4, things can change and move so quickly. So making sure that you're on top of every bit of data that you're getting, and you're adapting your ads accordingly, whether that's introducing a new creative and new ads, or it's, you know, shifting budgets around, switching things off that aren't working. You've got to constantly be adapting to get the maximum results that you can with the data that you've got available to you. And just before I guess everyone goes on to the Google side of things, looking at both platforms holistically, we look at as well the blended metrics that we're getting. So we take across all of our paid efforts, what's happening, and then looking at what sales and the metrics that we're seeing sort of in store, whether that's Shopify or another platform, so that we can get a sense of how the platforms are working together. So not just looking at our in-platform metrics as separate entities, but looking sort of more holistically what's happening.
Amazing. Rune, go for it.
Oh yeah, the holistic view is the key here, because the platform metrics, or looking at the platform data in silos, is not going to give you a good picture. The consumer purchase journey is prolonged. It's getting longer day by day. So there are multiple touch points across channels, across devices. So it becomes really hard for platforms to attribute the conversions back. So there could be duplication of conversions across channels. So as previously highlighted, a lot of brand awareness or traffic campaigns on Meta can lead to branded conversions on Google. So does that mean only Google is delivering sales? No. So just by looking at the platform data would not help. So the data privacy and tracking limitation do exist on Google. We do recommend brands to either use Google Tag Manager or custom events on Shopify to track the Google Ads conversion data, or if the brands are subscribing to any third-party attribution platforms like Triple Whale or Phosphor, that can give you a better picture about this customer journey across different channels and what is the right attribution. We should also be aware that the attribution window differences that exist between Meta and Google, like Meta operates on a 7-day click window, while Google standard attribution window is 30 days. So that could also cause some confusion in terms of tracking. So my take on the whole attribution challenge would be to rely on multiple sources of data, not just looking at one data source to judge whether the campaigns are working. So it can be your platform data plus your first party data, like on Shopify. Then if you're able to afford a third party platform like Triple Whale, then use that to inform your marketing decisions on channel.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing, thank you. Let's dive into some email marketing, some financial planning. Abir, from a financial perspective, what should brands prioritize in Q4 planning? As we know, Q4 can be very unpredictable. How can a financial modeling help them prepare for this?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a lot of the financial modeling, heavy lifting, if you will, needs to be done probably way before Q4, depending on your supply chain. Ultimately, the biggest challenges from a financial planning perspective with respect to Q4 are going to be having enough stock and then monitoring the rate at which your stock is being depleted because of sales. So, I mean, if you are able to make orders very quickly and get them into your warehouse within 2 weeks, fantastic. But most brands typically need a couple of months lead time. So a lot of that work should have been done early on, around now, maybe at the latest. But a lot of times the challenge of being able to know exactly how much to order is fairly significant. If you're kind of on the fence, maybe go for a little extra rather than a little less if you can afford it. But once you kind of have that inventory in, you're usually going to be just stuck with that amount for the Q4 period. Just keep a very close eye on the rate at which you're actually selling inventory. If you feel like BFCM is going very well, you're selling really well, your ROAS is fantastic, then possibly pull back on the ad spend. Realistically, there's no point in selling out quickly if you're going to sell out anyway. So remember to just kind of keep an eye on the inventory situation so that you can make sure you're not overspending. And at the same time, also take into consideration what you can do with that inventory in 2025. So if you have a shelf life consideration, for example, for certain types of products, then maybe it is worth it to just make sure you push it out during BFCM if things are going slower. If it's something that's an evergreen product, then you can just sell it like later on into 2025. It just means it's going to take, you're not going to have to place another order in March. You'll just place it in May instead. Then just take it easy. Don't stress too much about it. Ultimately, you just want to make sure that you get enough cash back during BFCM to sustain you for the next several months.
Absolutely, yeah, massively important. Obviously, the cash flow and whatnot. From an email marketing point of view, Mo, I know we touched off it a little bit earlier on about like this is your time to shine. Q4 is your go time. What is the optimal cadence for Q4? Like, how do you balance the emails between salesy emails and value-driven content? Obviously, we don't want to be salesy the whole time, but obviously we have to take Q4 with a pinch of salt.
Sure. So first thing, the biggest value that you can offer in Q4 is that you have your juiciest discount, your biggest discount in there. People have been waiting for it. How you can make impact for them is just making sure that they get that kind of message, even if it's crowded for your top customers. So just keep in mind that some of your customers would really miss the deal if you didn't kind of make a differentiating subject line or send like proper like cadence of more emails, not just sending a couple of emails. This actually will let some of your customers down if they kind of find out about this deal later. So this is number one. Number two, just keep in mind there is timing periods for this period. So there is before, during, and after. Before, there is not a big segment. It depends from a niche to a niche, but there is a segment of people that prepare to avoid the holiday rush. So they actually shop before Black Friday. So probably they may start this beginning of October, maybe for some like late in September even. Just keep that in mind. You should run an early sale for people who want to avoid the rush and give them an option to not receive the emails afterwards, because they chose and they plan to do so to avoid this entire rush. Number two is during, which is BFCM. At those days, you should be sending every day. At some days, you should be sending at maybe twice per day on Black Friday day itself, AM and the PM, and also on the Cyber Monday day itself. After, some people missed it. So, and there is some people that also shop late and because they do it for Christmas, don't kind of buy for the Black Friday stuff. So also keep that in mind. But try as much as you can, if you offer a discount that's bigger than the before, to exclude people who bought the before one, to not kind of give them this feeling that they missed a bigger discount and you should have kind of given this bigger discount first, not because you extended the sale. It's not fair for them. You can get some customer tickets for that. But if you don't care about this kind of customer tickets, go ahead and send it to all, and some will order twice and will not be bothered. So, that's the cadence that you should be kind of thinking for yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Obviously, you know, when we're looking at Q4, we're looking at sales, we're looking at BOGOs, we're looking at things like that. It's a tough time for brands. Obviously, it's eating into the margin and things like that. Abir, from a brand's perspective, how can they ensure profitability while offering these aggressive discounts like BOGOs or tiered sales and things like that? And what are the best strategies for managing the cash flow throughout?
Sure thing. So the biggest part of this is really just knowing your margins. The better you have an understanding of your cost structure and kind of all the variable expenses that go into delivering on, say, $100 order, the easier it is for you to actually target a discount and an offer that makes sense and is actually profitable for you. Naturally, almost every brand is going to have their gross margin deteriorate during this time frame because of the fact that they're offering discounts, and that's generally not what we want, but it's totally acceptable as long as you can make up for it with volume. If your gross profit goes up, then that's fine because you have more dollars hitting your bottom line. So you have to just be able to make sure that, for example, if you're basically going to offer 50% discount, but your sales go up by 10% compared to regular days, that probably wasn't worth it. You just lost money that you could have made at full price. So you want to make sure that you're balancing between the two. If you're going to offer a big discount, just make sure that the total volume goes up to make up for it. The other thing is also keep in mind the value of the people that you're acquiring during Black Friday. I mean, if these are customers that are never going to come back, then there's only so much of a profitability hit that you're willing to take because their lifetime value might not be that high. So you have to balance against that as well, but that obviously varies from brand to brand. From a cash flow perspective, in theory, it should be a little less of a concern during Black Friday because the biggest impact to your cash flow is always the inventory ordering. And that, like I mentioned earlier, should have happened maybe a month or two prior. So during this time frame, for the most part, you're running ads, you're putting it on a credit card or invoicing, depending on how you have stuff set up. And then Shopify is paying you within a few days. So you should be pretty much ahead from a cash flow perspective. And in general, you should be cash flow positive during this time. You can get a little bit more of an extension if you want by using a platform like Parker or one of these like kind of longer term credit card payment solutions. But for most brands, this time frame, you should be cash flow positive.
Okay, that's a great insight. Thank you so much. I'm just mindful of time, guys. I know we said we'd do this for 40 minutes, so we've got 3 questions left, so we'll go through them here now. So just going into post Q4. So obviously there's a time period there, obviously between Black Friday and the end of the year, or even between the holidays and then the end of the year as well, which people are dubbing Q5. Looking beyond Q4, Mo, how should brands prepare strategically for Q1 after the holiday rush?
So yeah, you're blasting emails for the last quarter. You should clean up a little bit. So you should first start by looking at your list and making decisions. For some brands, they may think holiday shoppers maybe they have low value, but they're in their situation. They may come back in another holiday, which could be maybe Valentine that's coming up, or maybe in the upcoming Black Friday. So they would decide to just exclude them from sending emails anymore, but just leave them on the list for whenever another holiday shopping comes. Also, you need to be removing people who have been unengaged and didn't buy at this point, because you just finished Q4 the entire year, your juiciest offer, you send more emails than ever, and no one engaged, no one bought. They are dead weight on the list. They are costing you money. Take them out, and also they are hurting the ability. Um, um, since we mentioned deliverability, since Q1, you should be at least for this quarter monitoring deliverability on a monthly basis, keeping a look at your spam rates, spam compliant rate, bounce rate, and subscribe rate, and also doing maybe 1 monthly test on Glock apps to check your inbox placement. Just on Q1 to kind of heal up from all the things that happened in Q4 and those sendings. And then you're going to be thinking, do not lower campaigns frequency for buyers in Q1. This is a mistake that most people do, because as we said, we want to be getting that second purchase as quickly as possible. And actually some people may decide to come again if you just stay on top of mind. So for only buyers, do not kind of lower your frequency, your usual frequency. So, but that doesn't mean you should go up to the frequency of Q4 again. Just your usual frequency, go back to it, and don't lower it for customers. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that. A beer then, from a financial planning side of things, this Q5 time that we speak about. So how can brands balance investing obviously so heavily in Q4 on their marketing efforts to maintain enough financial flexibility for post-holidays returns and potential Q1 slowdowns?
Yeah, so it comes down to knowing your brand and kind of like the sort of metrics to expect. If you have historical data, then obviously that's very helpful. But beyond that is just knowing the kind of product you have and the kind of customers you have. For example, what oftentimes some brands do as a mistake is that they essentially, even if they're not necessarily having a consumable product, but they have a product that has a little bit sort of that kind of recurring purchase nature, they just end up taking advantage of Q4 to channel stuff. So they're just moving sales up from Q1 into Q4 because it's all discounted on a trailing 12-month basis. They're not necessarily making much more profit, but they are just kind of getting that high of having a big Q4. So that can, if anything, kind of slow them down for Q1. So it really is a function of just knowing your customer, your brand, and what sort of behavior differences to expect from people during that time frame. And the other one is also kind of considering the differences between how much of your revenue is coming from returning customers versus new customers. If a lot of that revenue during Q4 is coming from new customers, then that might mean that you might have a slightly less impactful ad strategy on an evergreen basis in Q1. If a lot of it is coming from returning customers, then that's great too. That means your evergreen or your ads, your acquisition strategies will hopefully do well in Q1, but then just don't expect as much to be coming from your returning customers because you already bombarded them during Q4. So being able to consider those two buckets of customers well is going to help a lot with the modeling side of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a tough one to navigate, but thank you for those insights. Listen, we'll finish up with this one. I'm going to go around to each of you. I'm going to ask you to share one must-have tip, one common mistake not to make for DTC brands. Abir, you're on my screen. I'll get you to start first.
I would say that basically don't get too thirsty for just having really big revenue and ROAS numbers. I know it's obviously exciting and everybody wants that, but at the end of the day, just kind of keep in mind the profitability side of it. So if you're going to go hard on the discounting and stuff like that, that's cool, but just make sure that at the end of the day, you have a good gross profit and a good contribution margin so that that's actually coming in. And don't don't convince yourself that it'll be made up for with really good retention, because the retention metrics of BFCM customers typically aren't going to be the same as your retention metrics from a customer you acquire at full price in April. So don't lie to yourself and be like, yeah, I typically get 30% extra LTV later on. That probably won't be the case with the BFCM customer. So just be reasonable about those metrics.
Yeah, be realistic with yourself as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
Mo, I'll go to you next.
Think more than email. So you probably have some customers. If you have 100,000 people on your list and you have 20, like let's say 10,000 customers subscribe to your email, you probably have at least 5,000 who you don't have kind of consent to send them more emails. So think other channels. You can add BFCM, maybe send them an SMS or direct mail or retargeting, which would be cross-platforming. But I'm not sure if it's going to be a big sample like 5,000 when it comes to Meta and Google. So just go with SMS first. If you don't have your SMS number, go with direct mail, then check if the numbers align with paid ads, and if the number is good, make the cross-platforming. Then you can kind of take leverage of those, or even give your email consent if they bought from you before. So it's basically acquiring someone who bought from you before with a very low cost, sending a mail, direct mail.
Okay, thank you. Carly, hit me with it.
So my tip would be not to neglect your business as usual campaigns and creatives. They've got loads of learnings behind them. I've seen before people will switch all of those off and switch to Black Friday specific creative, but you should keep your business as usual campaigns running, and just make sure your offer is really clear on your website as well, because often they can outperform because they've got all of the history and learnings behind them. So that'll be my tip. And the pitfall to avoid is neglecting your creative. The creative is so important. So make sure you've got a good variety of creative and don't leave creative till the last minute.
Chris, did she steal your answer?
Sorry, Chris.
I will deny, I'm afraid. Let me just hurry through my notes then, just to change it. No, so my tip would be research. I think modern day advertisers and marketers, we fall into that last click mentality, but the foundations of advertising and marketing still remain the same from when Ogilvy was around. He famously said, advertising people who ignore research are as dangerous as generals who ignore decodes of enemy signals. And he would like read a whole car manual just to find the one headline or one insight that he would use for his tagline. The same way that creative directors, in Soho would give £10 to a junior exec, tell them to go down to a news agent and read a niche magazine like Bass Angler or like Horse and Hound or something like that. The same principles are still applying, but unfortunately we do have AI who can kind of do that for us in the modern day. So there are great tools out there like GigaBrain, Browse AI, and things like that, who will data scrape off of subreddits and on Reddit to find to gather mentions of brands or competitors for analysis, or scraping, collecting reviews and Facebook comments, and could use ChatGPT to find those individual insights as well. Conversely, my watch out is that don't rely too much on AI. Yeah, because as Steve Jobs says, creativity comes from connecting past experiences and synthesizing new ideas. It's something that AI cannot fully kind of replicate. So make sure that you're not solely relying on AI, because it may lead your campaigns feeling very formulaic or predictable. So make sure you're zigging when everyone is zagging, but using all the tools available so that you've got all the research to build on that.
Absolutely. I don't think we're quite at the age yet where the robots are going to take over. AI is a great, but it doesn't replace, which is great. And last but not least, then Arun.
One must-have tip on Google would be to focus on your brand share of voice and non-brand search audience. The intent of audiences on Google has been discussed previously on the call. So high intent audience are present on Google during Q4. All you need to make sure is your search ad or shopping ad is out there for them to click on. Then a common mistake I would say is do lower your TROAS targets. If you don't change your bids from your BAU period, you would limit the traffic that's coming to your site. Like you might not be winning the auction, or you might not be getting the visibility that you require during Q4. So do check your bids during the Q4 period.
Yeah, massively important because everybody will be reducing, so you just have to be, you know, reactive to that.
Yeah.
Just before we finish, there is one question in the chat box here. I wanted to ask if you recommend me to do pre-sales or early BFCM before BFCM, since my business is small and I don't know if my budget will be high enough to compete with the bigger brands. Let's go to Facebook first, to Meta.
Yeah, I've run BFCM for lots of small brands in the past, and they're really effective. But as Abir said, the important thing is to check your offer and make sure that it's still profitable for you. I find that that's sort of a key challenge for smaller brands. But yes, it can absolutely work. I tend to advise for smaller brands to kind of stick to that shorter period and not to do a pre-sale, but both can be effective.
Right. And for yourself then, Arun, when it comes to Google, do you see I suppose the high prices that are kicking in around BFCM? Do you see it like if you've got a smaller budget to it, just dodge it or throw yourself in?
Yeah, so over the last 2 years, what we have noticed on Google is there's this fake Black Friday. That's the Friday before the Black Friday. There's a huge spike in traffic on Google. The CPCs might not be as high as the real Black Friday one. So even small brands could have a window of opportunity to go behind the search audience there. But considering the cost, I would still recommend looking for niche searches and not going broad for small businesses. So the relevance would be higher, even though you slightly pay a bit more than your broad keywords, but the probability of conversion from those search audience would be much higher for the small business owners.
Okay, thank you. Another question in the chat box here. I'm a fashion brand who's more synonymous to elder women 50 plus. How do I ensure that I'm targeting younger audiences? I suppose on Meta side of things with the audience selection, I'll let Carly go into a little bit more, but there's obviously the age selection that you can do within Meta. Outside of that, then you can do lookalikes of lists from your CRM. If you've got an ideal customer profile that you've got in your CRM, you can start importing those into Meta and either targeting them or making a lookalike of them to ensure that people are finding Meta is finding similar audiences. Carly, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, you're creative. Make sure you're creative and your messaging is talking to a younger audience. You can't have an image with a 50-plus-year-old woman in your clothing and expect a 25-year-old to buy it. So if you're wanting to get more of that younger audience into your brand, then definitely make sure that your creative is speaking to that younger audience, as well as obviously using the targeting in Facebook.
Rune, do you have anything to add on top of that for Google search?
Apart from the messaging that Kali said, I would say landing pages. The landing page content needs to be fine-tuned to the younger audience. Like if we can find those audience searches on Google, but if they land on the site and still see a 50-year-old model shots or content that's more synonymous to the elder woman, then the conversion rate might not be good on Google. So focus on your landing page content.
Absolutely, you need people to be able to see themselves wearing the clothes. So speak to them at that level, I suppose.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Abir, thank you for calling in. It's been great to have you here. Arun, Mo, Carly, Chris, thank you so much for your time. It was massively helpful. If anyone does have any questions afterwards, please do email away. We will be sending out a recording of this afterwards. So again, thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a lovely day or evening wherever you are based in the world.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.